Hi, I'm Gina.
And I'm Jenn.
And this is Job Search Stories. This is a question that people are constantly asking about how to talk about themselves. How you're doing it.
Well, before we get into it, Gina, do you like talking about yourself in an interview?
Oh, because I was like, do I like talking about myself? I love talking about myself.
Yeah.
Do I like talking about myself in an interview? I think it depends how I feel going into the interview. Mm-hmm. If I'm nervous, then I probably don't feel great talking about myself. I maybe just want to get those questions out of the way and just get to more of the nitty gritty of the interview. But if I feel really confident, I think talking about myself, it's a breeze. I have a viewer question, and this one comes from Catherine. So one basic question, please introduce yourself. How do you answer this question? And so basically, this is how do you talk about yourself effectively in an interview?
The important thing to remember is you're not just going to be talking about yourself in an interview. It's really important to know how to, because an interview is a really common place for you to do it. But there are so many other parts in the job search where you're going to have to be able to talk about yourself.
I try to think about times where I've maybe not done the best job talking about myself. And I just thought they wanted to chat, I was like, well, last night I was watching this show. It was really good. Ooh, I also had the best meal ever. It was great. What about you? How are you doing? That's just...
You're sharing your hobbies and interests and not necessarily connecting it back to the reason that you're there.
Young Gina, how embarrassing of
But
her.
You've learned a lot since then.
I've learned my lesson.
You're going to share your knowledge.
Yeah, now I'm sharing my knowledge with the world. But also, I would love for anybody else who's watching or listening, if you have anything crazy that they might have done during an interview, let us know in the comments down below, because I'd love to hear it. I love to laugh along with you. So go ahead and share it.
When you're talking about different places where you could talk about yourself in the job search, it comes up quite a bit. You could, of course, be talking about yourself in a resume, that professional summary where you're giving your elevator pitch. That's a great place. In cover letters, if you're trying to explain a career gap, why you're interested in a role, why you're transitioning to a new industry, that's a really great place for you to share a little bit more about you. And then, of course, in the interview, when they ask, and there's a lot of different ways in which they can ask, but if they're straight out asking you to tell them about yourself, of course, you're going to have to do it.
So there's really different stages of the job search process where you're probably going to end up telling the recruiter, the hiring manager about yourself. Okay, but if you are doing it in all of these different places, what should you be doing and what should you be sharing in the interview stage versus what should you be putting on your resume, for example?
Right. So when we compare how you talk about yourself on a resume versus how you talk about yourself in an interview, remember, resume, marketing document, recruiters hardly going to look at it. So that resume is there to get you in the door. So within the content of it, of course, you're putting things like skills, all those applicant tracking system keywords that we talked about that are pulled from the description. But when you're talking about yourself in an interview, this is your time to elaborate. This is your time to really tell about your professional career journey. And you really get the opportunity to connect the dots. So not just, here's all the things I've done, but here's where I really see myself, and here's how your company fits into my plan.
Okay.
So when was the last time you had to give an elevator pitch, and were you prepared to do it?
Yeah. So I feel like the time that really sticks out to me the most was definitely when I was not even in my professional career yet. I was definitely in college, senior year of college, trying to find the best job for me. And they had finally had a networking event with companies for me in the industry that I wanted. And I was like, oh, finally, I'm going to meet people who could be my future coworkers or my future bosses. And there was this one woman, I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to her. She's going to hire me on the spot. I'm going to get the internship. I'm going to live my dreams. This is what dreams are made of. And I think essentially she was asking me for an elevator pitch in, different wording or whatever. And the look on her face was just very this girl is failing. This girl is not doing what she needs to do. And it was just definitely a thumbs down from her. Definitely never heard from that woman again. We never spoke. I maybe got her email after that, but I think it was like a pity, like, here's my email, get out of my face type of thing. But
I mean, you got the email, so that's kind of a win.
I did not email her though, because I'm great at reading faces. I was like, she wants me to get away from her. I definitely didn't answer her correctly. I didn't give a good elevator pitch.
Well, I'm happy all roads led you here.
I mean, the experience that I was having was I didn't really have a lot of experience, especially in the industry that that woman was in. Mm-hmm. How do you talk about yourself when you have no experience?
I have rarely worked with anybody who had zero experience. I think the problem that people have is connecting the experience. So that's where we really talk about transferable skills, right? And even really digging into your experiences where even if they weren't paid, they're still valuable. So for somebody like you in that situation, you mentioned you were at university, if you had done any volunteer work, class projects, were part of any student organizations, even just had special interests, things you pursued on your own, those are all things that you can talk about and connect to. You can also use words like entry level, emerging professional, junior, things like that when you're describing yourself. It just signals to people you're new, that's okay, but here's all the ways in which I really am kind of qualified for this.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Another question I have is, how do you talk about your industry experience when you're switching careers?
This is something that I've had to deal with personally. I moved from working in higher ed into working in tech. And so sometimes it's almost like you're looking to speak the same language. And you can find that commonality when you're talking about those transferable skills. So skills like teamwork, leadership, adaptability, empathy, strategic planning, and problem solving. These are skills that are going to be valuable regardless of which industry you're in. And so they're ones that you should talk about.
I love that. I feel like it's really just about highlighting your skills because one way or another, you can really sell yourself. I'm assuming your elevator pitch, similar to your resume, should not be the same for everyone. So how do you customize that elevator pitch based on who you're talking to?
If you're talking to a recruiter, they're really trying to qualify you. So your elevator pitch is going to lean heavier on bringing up those skills or qualifications that you might have. If you're talking to a hiring manager, well, of course, you want to mention skills. You might want to be talking more about how you see yourself really growing in that company because they're looking for longevity, right? They want somebody who's going to be able to do the job, but somebody who's going to want to stay there for a little bit. So you really have to adapt based on the person that you're talking to.
I feel like that makes a lot of sense. All in all, you just got to be adaptable and do your best.
Adaptability is a transferable skill.
That is a transferable skill. Boom. Trademark. Anyways, kind of moving on. This is like a little shift, little shift in gears. So kind of digging deeper into that interview phase. So before we talk about tell me about yourself, I kind of want to know, what interview questions do you prefer? The ones that you can prepare for, or those ones where you're like, ooh, that interviewer, they really thought about that one. They really ate with that one.
I mean, I like to be asked to introduce myself in a really interesting way. One way that I was asked to share about myself, which I thought was really interesting, was the interviewer asked me to walk them through my resume. And I thought this was really great because, I got to talk about the skills and experience that I had that I thought really aligned with the role. But it also gave me that opportunity to really highlight some, what I think were wins or unique selling points about myself that were on my resume that I wanted to make sure she really knew about. Do you have a favorite?
I mean, personally, when I'm like hiring people, for my specific team or for like roles, I like asking them like, what's a channel that you like to watch on YouTube? and like why, you know, because like that also tells you a lot about a person, just like what type of content they like. And, you know, it's cool. Like it's cool to kind of see like what they're into. I mean, everybody's different, but also the why kind of gives me like, oh, if they can really like kind of dig into what makes YouTube kind of like a cool place to be.
Right.
You know?
It's like they can describe what is so engaging about those videos you watch, because we're all trying to make engaging content here.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty. I want you to give your best advice. How do you answer, tell me about yourself in an interview?
Sure. And you're not going to be surprised when I say this word, but it's all about relevancy. It's all about connecting your path to this company. And there's a really easy formula that you can use to do this. Think present, past, future. What are you doing currently? What have you done in the past? Your education, your skill set that kind of led you here. Future goals. How does this role in particular fit into your career plan? And so what you're really trying to do is make sure that you're focusing on that relevant information so that you're telling a recruiter or hiring manager exactly why you're fit for this role when you're introducing yourself.
Okay. So now I really want to get into the questions outside of tell me about yourself, because there are other questions that I feel like hiring managers ask you to kind of gauge your personality, because sometimes people want to know if you're, you know, going to make a good fit for the team. So I have a couple questions and I want you to tell me what a hiring manager is thinking when they ask these questions. Okay, so here's the first one. What motivates you in your work?
If they're asking a question about motivation, one, they want to know, are you going to find this work interesting? Is this work that you're going to want to come and do every day because you are really interested in it? Or is it going to be a little bit of a struggle for you? Because they want to ultimately find alignment. They want to make sure that if you're coming into it, this fits into your career journey. And so this is going to be a place that you want to stay. They also want to give you the opportunity to demonstrate a little bit of your knowledge and experience. So when you talk about what motivates you, you're set up to give a really good example of, you know, work that you've done in the past that you found really exciting. So when you think about different motivators, you can think about things that will be self-motivated. So you're doing the work because you generally like it or it makes you feel good. Extrinsic motivators would be you enjoy recognition or like being rewarded.
Okay, so basically what motivates you in your work, they really want to know what's the driving force behind you being in this line of work. So another personality-based question that job seekers probably hear a lot is, how do you handle pressure?
For sure. And another way they might ask this is, how well do you work under pressure? Because some jobs have high pressure situations and they want to know how well you're going to perform in those situations. And so when you're asked this question, a really great tactic is to use the STAR method. So you really want to walk them through a scenario where you had to work under pressure, because that's going to give them a good sense of, okay, she's done it before, she can do it again. They can hear your thought process. And ultimately, they can also see, how do you manage stress? So it could be really good to talk about, you know, if you had a stressful workload in the past, what did you do to self-regulate? You know, did you take breaks? Did you meditate? Did you set a 15-minute start at the beginning of the day to just prioritize your work so that you could prepare to kind of alleviate as much stress as you could?
I understand that, because I feel like I'm in the particular role that I'm in because I don't work really well under pressure. Like I just don't. So I feel like this specific question is really to be like, are you in the right field for you? Like if you don't handle stress well, you should probably choose a job with a little bit less stress.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
Not everything's for everybody. Okay. So another personality-based question is, do you prefer working on a team or independently?
This is a really good question to even test whether or not you've read the job description. Because if it specifically states that you're working within a team environment, that's something that you should talk about. You should talk about your past experiences. When I think about what is a successful tactic overall to answer this question, really leaning into adaptability. focusing on sharing that while you do love those opportunities where you can just buckle down and work on your own, but you love the opportunity to collaborate. You can really talk about whether or not you had the opportunity to do both in your past role. Because if this job allows you to, that's a selling point for you. And you can really talk about how that's something that you saw and you're really excited about.
I love that. I love working by myself, but I love chit-chatting with my team. Cute. Okay, so last question I have for you is something that job seekers really struggle with. I've seen it a lot in our comments is, tell me about a time that you failed.
We all fail, right?
It happens.
We're not perfect. We make mistakes.
I'm perfect. Just kidding. I know I'm not. Like, I have failed.
I have failed. And not every failure has to be a big failure. But when you're asked to give an example of a time you failed or a time you made a mistake, they're really looking to hear, one, a recent example, one that would be somewhat relevant to the role. You want to make sure that the example that you give, it would not necessarily be a deal breaker. Like if you're working in HR and the example that you give is that you violated like some compliance or confidentiality, that is not an example that you want to share, right? But you do want to make sure that you're highlighting the lesson that you learned. So when we talk about the strategies to answer interview questions, Carl can be a good one. So if you remember, that is context, action, result, and lesson, because they really want to hear about personal growth. What did you learn and how are you applying that to how you work now?
Nice. Like I feel like a lot of these similar to behavioral questions where they're really trying to gauge like who you are, how you work, and how you handle certain situations, how you've grown from certain situations, and what you can bring from your past experience into this new role. I love that.
You got it.
Just to wrap it up a little bit, this is my favorite part. In 60 seconds or less, give us your best advice on how to talk about yourself effectively.
So my best tips for how to talk about yourself effectively in the job search. On your resume, you want to make sure that you're focusing on those skills, experience, and attributes that are directly related to the job. So relevancy is key. When you're in an interview, you want to use strategies like STAR or CARL. And especially if you're asked about a time that you've made a mistake, you want to make sure that you're focusing on personal growth and what you learned. And ultimately, you want to be tying it back to the company. So if you can focus on how your core values match theirs, that's a bonus.
Beautiful. We talk about this a lot. Advocate for yourself, sell yourself, and always listen to Jenn.
Listen to me.
ALJ. Always listen to Jenn. Forgot the T, but that's fine. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening to us. As always, please make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any episodes of Job Search Stories, and see you next time. Bye.
I'm gonna fight these planes. Like,
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
I don't know.
To a big old plane of the gerb. There's
to your current worker.
my spidey senses are tingling.